Well, I think most of you know me. I'm Glory Wright. Probably see me in the choir, helping with different things around here. Probably see my smiles. Maybe you know my gentle spirit. And you'll be surprised at what I have to tell you about my life. The Lord's brought me a long way from where I was. This is Child Abuse Month. I was severely abused from the time I was 6 years old. And since we have older people in here, I can, there's different kinds of abuses. There's verbal, there's just, abuse where they beat you, and there's sexual abuse. And I suffered all of that. My first memory of abuse is when my mother had moved to Baltimore and with a man. And he was abusive in all those ways. Many, many times I was sexually abused by him. I was beaten. I don't know if anybody knows what a razor strap was, where they would sharpen their razors. I was beaten with that. And I was thrown in the basement, in the dark basement, and left there. I was starved. Going up the steps from the dining room, I was made to sit on the steps and put my hands on the railings and watch them eat. I wasn't allowed to eat. He would give me stale bread and water. I don't like water very much, nor do I like stale bread. Sometimes I was locked outside and left outside at night. We lived in Baltimore, so I can tell you something as well. He would send me out in horrible storms. I was very, very scared. And I would often pray that he would die. Get in front of the cross and pray. I think my saving grace was probably, I was placed in Catholic school. So I did have catechism and I did learn about the Lord. Down in that basement, the lights would come through from the street. And there was a picture of the Madonna with the Christ child. And I often admired that. I learned to like spiders in the basement. I learned they didn't hurt you. It was very, very lonely. I did not know love growing up. I did not know love. I wasn't allowed to smile. Just from my childhood on into my adulthood, I suffered abuse. It's very hard to talk about. And I want to say the journey that God brought me on, I did run into people that helped me survive. There was a lady down the street that, on my way to school, because we walked, she would give me an apple filled with peanut butter. I have no idea why to this day. She would have an apple ready for me with peanut butter in it. But when I look back on my life, that's God. That is God in a being. I had teachers that took me under wing. I was placed in a foster home. They had let me go back. When I said I prayed and prayed that he would die, he did. When I was about 12 years old, I suffered 6 years under him. And he did, and I felt so guilty because that was my fault. I prayed he would die. And until I got into adulthood, I felt that it was my fault that he died. I was placed in a foster home, and there was still abuse in a foster home, a place where you should be protected. Not all foster homes are good, and there was abuse. And as a child, you grow up with that, especially sexual abuse, and you come to think that that is normal. You come to think that then you find out, oh, that's not normal. That's not normal. And you feel the guilt of, you feel like it was maybe your fault. You're even told by people it's your fault. So, the journey, and when I was about 16, I committed suicide. And I say I committed suicide because I did go into the light. And that light was unlike anything you see here on earth. It was peaceful. And for the first time in my life, I felt love. I felt love. And I could look down and see what they were doing to me in that emergency room. I could see that they were putting, now I know what it was, it's charcoal down into make me vomit. And then I had no clue, it was just they were doing things to me, and I could watch, and I could see. And then I started going back into that thought about they want to. But he sent me back. And then more of a journey. And my first husband was verbally abusive. And he made me feel like I was nothing. Like I had no, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't take care of my children. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. I was nothing. And I told him about my abuse, and he said that was my fault. And I believed it. I believed that I was nothing. And when we divorced, he got custody of the kids because he convinced me I was nothing. And I was divorced 10 years, and I grew an awful lot in that time. The Lord brought me here and brought me through. First time I spoke about child abuse is when I was a paramedic and I picked up a child that was sexually abused. She was about 8 years old. And after that, I talked with Pastor Lau. He came to my apartment and we talked, and I told him my life. And he said, Gloria, you are all right. You are okay. And that's the first time I ever felt like maybe I could stop looking at myself as it was all my fault. And then as a paramedic, I sat through different classes on abuse and so I began to heal the different people put in my life, and I healed. And then the Lord brought me here, and that was probably the journey where I've healed the most. And child abuse should never happen. It just should not happen. And anything that we can do, bullying is abuse. I was bullied, and as a child you act out too because you don't know what to do, especially back then. You weren't allowed, you didn't talk to adults. You weren't, there was no one you could go to. And now you can go to people. You can go to a trusted pastor. You can go to a trusted teacher, a trusted member of your family, and you can talk about it. I remember in my foster home, I hid under the kitchen table, and acted out. I was 14 years old. I went to bed because I was afraid. You know, I was not a normal 14-year-old kid. I would cut myself. It's one way of acting out. Just because I hated myself, I hated my body, I just hated everything. So now it's time to share and reach out and maybe help people. You can be a better person. I always say a lot of abusers grow up to be abusers, but you have a choice. You can turn to God, and you don't have to take that low road and abuse. You can take that high road and be the person that God's meant you to be and help other people. And He's told me it's time to talk about it. As hard as that is for me. And I didn't know real family love until he came along. With his family, and they are just wonderful people. And that's the first time I felt that love.
Did you have siblings?
I had a sister when we first moved to Baltimore. She was 5 years younger than I. She was a darker skinned person, and so I'm sorry, honey, but he would say that she was a nigger, and he didn't want anything to do with her. And in that essence, she was protected. She didn't have to suffer abuse. And then before he died, 2 brothers came along, but they were very little, and they didn't suffer abuse.
And they were his kids.
Mm-hmm. They were his kids.
And your sister was your half sister. Do you have contact with any of them?
Not anymore. They just, once I went into foster care, and I tried to get back in contact, but they just I think that I'm better than them, and that's not true. I just have a lot of problems.
Good.
You fill that out. Am I sitting this in here? Good.
Sure. Just put it right there. It's good.
You know, copy receipts in between the top 2 boxes. Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. And you all have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks.
How many different foster homes were you in?
Just one. And
And they sexually abused you also?
yes. And she would beat me with a hose from the sweeper, and he would sexually abuse. And I told my social worker that back then they just didn't believe kids.
Mm-mm.
They just didn't. And she just, thought I was lying.
So were you there till you were 18? I mean, did you age out in the system?
Yes. And I stupidly got married. But I have my two children. But, they came back to live with me when they were in their young teenage years. I had found out that my daughter was abused by him. And by that time, I had gotten stronger, and I took them away with threats. But, you never know. As I talk about my abuse with people, and you find out so many people have been abused, along life's highway, I've talked a little bit. And you find so many people. And you can pick up read the news today, and there's so many, so many, and it just breaks my heart.
It's hard to fathom
Mm-hmm.
that people could do that to a child.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of amazed at the statistic you had on the screen today about the kids that are abused.
Yeah, it's
I had no idea.
yeah. A lot of abuse.
Now, when you touched on committing suicide. Did you say you took pills?
I took pills. This was at my foster parents, and I took pills. They were born one evening, and life was so. I just didn't want to live anymore. I didn't have anything to live for. Didn't, in my mind.
Well, and I mean, I think, for all people, that try to commit suicides, a lot of them do have things to live for, but I can see the helplessness of your situation.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's important for people who contemplate suicide to see where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
If your life had ended there, all of the good that would not have happened, like It's a Wonderful Life, but I mean, all of everything that you touched and did and would not be here if you had succeeded with
It
that.
seems like after I started talking about it, after that child, Lord seemed to send me people all the time to help, different situations, and many have come back and said thank you. Many kids, and not all of them were in those badly abusive situations, but bad situations, and he just sends me people. I'll do whatever, but it's hard. And my mother committed suicide when I was 26 years old. She had come to me and talked with me, and to this day I cannot remember anything that she said to me.
Your biological mother.
My biological mother. I wish I could remember what we talked about, but I can't. Because I probably asked her some tough questions.
Probably blocked it out.
So, it's a tough life, but one question is, would I go back and change my life if I had the chance to change that life? 20 years ago, I told you yes, I would. Today, I would say no, I would not. It's made me the person I am. It's given me the compassion and the caring for other people. It's given me the strength. It's given me the strength. So I would not go back and change. And a few years ago, Rick and I went to we had taken a young man to D.C. and I said, I want to go to Baltimore and I want to go back and stand in front of that house in which I was abused in. And I found, I knew exactly where it was. It was still there. We had the row houses. Across the street was still that empty lot, which was a surprise. But, and I faced that house and I thought, you know what, you can't hurt me anymore. You can't hurt me. And I've ended up forgiving. Because if you don't forgive, it eats away at you.
Like Helen's
have
sermon
that
last
power.
week, that the stones that trap all that in to roll away.
If you don't forgive, they have that power over you still. So, forgiveness.
It was something you had to work for too. I mean, it's not something like that is not just a I forgive you. I mean, it's a process.
It's a process, and you're never going to get over what happened. But you can be a better person. You can get past it. You can live your life as you're meant to live your life. But sitting here inside I'm quivering.
Mhm.
Way on the outside too.
Well, I mean, you could be. I mean, you could be bitter. You could be. You could hold a grudge. You could let that kind of stuff eat at you, and think, poor me. This is what
Yeah.
I mean, which is, I think a natural tendency.
And I did that as a young person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. It's just, I looked at people that looked so happy and I thought, that's not fair.
Yeah.
There was a little girl in my neighborhood when I was little. She had passed away and she had the prettiest clothes and I was so jealous. The little kid. It's just, because I didn't have anything. I didn't get Christmas. There was nothing. So, and people often will ask me, how did your mother allow that to happen? And when I look back, he was an alcoholic, I'm pretty sure. One time I remember him beating my nose so bad, she could not get up off the floor. So she couldn't protect me. She was afraid. How can you protect someone when you're brought down? You can't. And that's what I understand as an adult.
Well, like in that video today, we saw the mother was not the focus at all. She was being beaten, but the video didn't go back. I mean, she's just kind of a non-entity because she wasn't necessarily abusing, but she was just kind of
Just
one of the.
step back. She stepped
Yeah.
back because, she was probably abused as well.
Well, we saw her being beaten
She
before the
abused
little girl saw her
Mhm.
while being beaten. And
But I'm glad that my sister did not have to go through that. My brother once asked me, because they didn't know their father because he died when they were little. But my oldest of the two had asked, what was my father like? And I said, Henry, do you want the truth or do you want me to lie about it? He said, I want the truth. And I said, he was the meanest son of a bitch I have ever met in my life. And here's what happened. Excuse my language, but that's what I
So
did.
very true.
and so I told him the story, whether he believed it, I don't know. But I said, thank God you didn't know. Just
How did you end up at the hospital when you committed suicide?
I think a friend had called me, and I told her what I'd done, and I said, I told her goodbye. And she had called somebody else, who called the ambulance. And I don't know where my foster parents were, but I remember the lady coming to my house and the ambulance coming, and
And what was their reaction to you once you came back? I mean, like, your foster parents.
indifference. Just indifference.
You're here now, but did you find it really hard to believe in God? Because where was he then?
At times, yes. But then, when I look back on my life now, I can see, he sent this person. He sent this person. Just these things in my life that made me a better person than I could have been. A lot of them were teachers. Those friends that come in and out of your life that God sends, or angels that God sends, I think, just to get you through. You might never see them again.
And then you became that.
Yes, I do. Hadn't thought about that. I'm always here for anybody that would like to talk or. But I think sometimes it takes somebody that has been through things to understand. Because I look at people and think, oh, how lucky they were to have such a good family. But you don't know what's behind those closed doors.
That's exactly right.
You know, I can look at anybody and say, oh, wow, you had it so great as, growing up or any time, but you don't know.
We never know. I mean, you never know what
You
someone's
don't know
going
what's
through.
behind those closed doors.
And that's what I mean. When you guys have friends or just people that you cannot stand at school or something because they act out or do something, you don't know why. You don't know what's going on in their life that's behind whatever they're doing or however they're acting. Like Gloria.
I didn't have a lot of friends growing up because I acted out a lot. I was a crazy kid. I really was. And I wasn't a very social person. And I don't think I became very social until I got the job at the emergency squad, and then you just had to be. You had to speak up and you had to. I'm just grateful I'm where I'm at today. I'm grateful I have him.
You guys aren't mad. You're blessed to be.
Gloria, did teachers that you had at school have any idea that this was, I mean, I know you weren't gonna tell, right?
I don't know that they had an idea.
Yeah.
I don't know because it's just not something you talked about.
Right.
But maybe they did because Mrs. Kidd just kind of reached out, and back then you could do more with kids than you can now. I mean, you'd be afraid to do some of the things now. Like, she'd take me home for a weekend and that was okay. But you couldn't do that now. And, my band teacher, Winona Spurgeon, high school choir or high school band, she reached out to me. And once I got my divorce, I ran into her, and we became friends later in life. And she was very instrumental in just helping me through a lot of things.
I think anytime that people are stay aware, and teachers, are in a unique position to be able to do that, to be able to just be aware of a person, and if they are, and then they can see that there's something, but they might not know what it is, but they know that something isn't right. You probably were malnourished looking. I mean, you probably had a lot of things.
When I was little, I was. Yes.
And
malnourished. And that led into gaining a lot of weight too before I had weight loss surgery. Because I felt if I would go on a diet and I couldn't have my food, it just felt like I was right back there again. And I just couldn't diet. I just could not. So the weight loss surgery was my last chance to get healthy. And I did. But that was my last hurdle, my weight loss. Because that was just so hard. Because I always associated, even though I know I'm in control, when you take away, I felt like I lost control. It was just really hard.
your mind knows you're in control, but your spirit. And I mean, I asked Elizabeth to come too to talk, about how, talking to you, I know that you didn't get involved in substance abuse.
No.
But a lot of people that may have been in your shoes,
Sure.
leading into, into substance abuse. And so I asked Elizabeth to talk a little bit about that and how, the kind of work is on it with that.
Yeah, so the one common denominator that we see with many health-related issues is trauma. So you can Google it, it's really easy. It's the adverse childhood experiences. And in West Virginia, we have an average of 4 for every child has 4 different adverse childhood experiences. And those things could be abuse, those things can be witnessing domestic violence, they can be simple things like divorce of a family. It could be a natural disaster, but that a child experiences in their lifetime. It is not a guarantee that you will suffer from some sort of illness later on, and that's whether that be a physical or mental illness, because those traumas have an impact on our body and our genetics. So we've seen long-term studies where, especially with indigenous populations, where the taking of land, destroying culture actually is genetically modified, or it manipulates the genetics in the body. So the trauma is historical as well as it is experienced right up front. So I think it's interesting that you talk about the weight loss surgery and the struggle you have with food. I know many people in your same situation that have the same, have even into adulthood, know that they have control, but a fear of losing that control. And having the general world understand that is difficult. So the adverse childhood experiences or adverse experiences is something that we all have in common. And if we did a test, which I wanted to do but didn't know how big the group was going to be, we would all figure out that we all have some, at least 4. Sometimes it's a little less, 2 to 4. That's on average what West Virginians in Appalachia, not just West Virginia, but in Appalachia, what we experience. Many have more than that, and upwards of 13 and 14 different adverse childhood experiences that impact the way we process daily life. And that impacts how we cope, the way we process the world around us, the way we interpret another person's social interaction, the way we handle conflict. So a lot of things can lead to, specifically talking about childhood abuse, can lead to other things in life. Higher risk of domestic violent relationships, intimate partner violent relationships, because of that worthlessness, that feeling of I'm not good enough, I don't deserve enough, I don't understand what love really means versus what the love I've experienced means. So even being part of an intimate partner violent relationship, I've been there, I've done that, I've seen it, I've learned from it, like you said, I learned from it. You still have that when you move forward in life, and it does make you a certain kind of person. Some people, that trauma is so severe and there's no one in their life that's put there to help them figure out how to cope with that trauma. So that's where the substance abuse comes into. It starts with acting out. It starts with, that's a cry for help. That is a bad kid, and I really hate the term bad kid. I can't stand the term bad kid. Not one single child is a bad kid. They may have inappropriate behavior, but they do not have bad behavior. They don't have bad kids. Because there's something there that they need addressed in a way that they don't understand how to handle. And it could be something simple. You know, the toy broke on their way to school this morning, and now they don't know how to deal with it. So I describe it as a backpack. And this one's pretty full. But if you take this backpack and one kid comes to class and this is empty, but this is their emotional backpack. This is somebody that's pretty full, and this is somebody who has a lot that they brought to school with them. So if we think about it, not just at school, but if we think about work and daily life, that what are people carrying in their backpack? What do we have that they're dealing with that they're not telling us that we can't see? You know, if it would be cool if everybody wore a backpack every day. We could tell how much was in it, right? Wow, I see you're carrying a lot today. Or I could see the heavy weight on your shoulders today, and we see that. We don't always get that opportunity. But most folks get into substance abuse because they're treating pain. They have to find a way, whether it be physical pain or emotional pain, but pain, it's a trauma. It could be a physical trauma, it could be an emotional trauma. So our opiate crisis in the state is physical pain. Most of the time it's physical pain. We in Appalachia are blue collar workers, and we do a lot of hard back-breaking work, and so we were preyed upon, for lack of a better way of saying it, by companies who said, you doctor need to make your patients pain-free. So they were treating a physical pain. So that's how it started here. That's diminishing. which is good to hear, except now we have increases in other substances. So every time that I get funding that says you're going to target opiates, or you're going to target underage drinking, or you're going to target, I just cringe because I want to target pain. How do I heal people? How do I work to make kids feel like comfortable in school and feel like somebody cares, and how to understand their emotions and how to process those emotions, or how do I make somebody feel like they're no longer hurting? And that's emotional or physical. So when I look at somebody with substance use disorder, and our language has changed. So I use substance use disorder, it's not addiction. That's our crisis. Our crisis isn't, it's a mental illness. We have a crisis of mental illness and trauma. So how do we treat that? Most of the folks that you run into have a trauma in their life that they're dealing with, that they haven't dealt with well, but they found a way that they can self-medicate, that they can treat in some way or another. And so you having that small piece of compassion to understand this person's not a bad person, but that they were hurt at some point, whether that be physically or emotionally or mentally. Some of it's spiritual. They've been hurt spiritually in some way, shape, or form. So kind of what we try to encourage a lot of places to do is to really focus on understanding the person as a whole person, not just as the illness itself. You talked about suicide as well. Suicide is a symptom of that pain as well. It's not a I want to kill myself. It's a I have to stop the pain. I have to stop the hurt. It's emotional, it's physical, it's strong. And I don't know how to do that other than ending it all, because that's all I have left. So when you look at somebody with substance use disorder and you see that illness is something that they're trying to treat with, they're using a substance to treat that. And for just a minute of time, that substance gives them something free. We see that in young populations in schools. Typically it starts off with some sort of trauma or another illness where they're self-medicating. Marijuana being one that a lot of kids with ADHD symptoms will start with marijuana because it helps them feel normal and regulated, and they can actually sit through a classroom and manage their own personal space. But going forward, it turns into a lot more than that. So getting into substance abuse is usually a form of treating something else. The one thing I really want to focus on is the stigma surrounding that, because we all have a part to play when it comes to looking at somebody and immediately making a judgment that there's something negative or something wrong with them. And it's hard for us as humans to do that, to think the best in folks, because we've either been burned, and when you're burned, you remember that more than when you have a good interaction. It's just what's normal. But we as a society take a look at that one person with an illness. So there's this one person sitting here, and we look at that person and say, name the illness. You can pick anything you have in your brain, but pick something. This person has that illness. And immediately we start to make a judgment about that person and who they are and what they are. And so there's this public stigma. That's us making the judgment on that one person. And then that person, because of the judgment we have made, starts to believe it. It's not that they thought that way about themselves initially. It's just that, well, everyone else says I am, so I must be. Well, I keep getting told I'm nothing, then I'm going to start believing I'm nothing. And we see that in our substance abusing population too. Well, I'm an addict, always an addict, I'll always be an addict. I don't advocate for changing AAs the way they do things, because it's worked for 60 years. I'm not going to ask them to change it. They're doing their good stuff. But for us on the outside, saying, well, they're always going to be that kind of person, immediately makes that person think that. So they're less likely to get treatment. They're less likely to succeed in getting well because of that stigma. And then that continues into the family. So now these people, what we call courtesy stigma, those people surrounding the person with that illness, now start to believe the same things. So we have family that start to say, well, I can't be associated with that loved one of mine because it makes me look that way too. So now I can't, either I'm fearful, I'm angry, because everyone else sees that person and it reflects poorly on me, the family person. And then structurally, that we have a structural stigma. So those are things like policies and procedures and ways of doing things that keep that person in that way of feeling. And that can be anything from not believing the child when they say, hey, this is going on and it's got to change. It could be, well, we've got to jump through X, Y, and Z hoops before we can make that removal happen. It can be, for instance, right now, if you have a drug felony on your record, you cannot get food stamps. You can have a murder felony conviction on your record, but you cannot have a drug felony. So if you have a murder felony record, then you can still get food stamps, but not with drug felonies. You know, I mean, those are, when I say food stamps, that's old school. It's SNAP now, but you know what I'm talking about. So, and it's also what keeps kids down. And I say that because I will go to a community forum. I have 25, 30 people in the room. Every kid is using drugs. Every kid drinks. And I just cringe. I cringe because there is a huge population of our youth that do not engage in substance use. In West Virginia, we've done the surveys, we've done the footwork. 66% of our high school students do not drink alcohol in 30 days. Within the survey, the 30 days within the survey. And I know I have people challenge that, but it's survey. They're reporting their own thing. Well, most kids will be completely honest on a survey because they don't have to put their name on it, and they're going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. They're not going to tell you what you want to hear. They're going to tell you the truth. So 66% of kids don't use alcohol, yet we focus on the other percentage that do. 97% of kids don't use prescription drugs in the way they're not supposed to. In other ways, illicitly. 97% of our kids are drug-free. That is massive, and we focus on this. Don't get me wrong, 3% is a lot of kids. That's a lot of kids, and we got to focus on those kids. But we also have to focus on the kids that aren't using.
That's prescription.
That's prescription drugs.
Okay.
Marijuana is just as high. So there's this assumption that all kids smoke pot. They don't. Most kids don't use, but we focus on the kids that do. So then kids look at it and go, well, if they are, then I must. To fit in, I got to be over here. But in all actuality, the kids that don't use are in the majority already. They are the cool crowd. And so it's changing that message. But structurally, the way we are structurally focused is that we focus on the kids that we have identified as either at risk or are already using. And we miss the kids that haven't shown that yet to shake them. So there are things that we can do just ourselves, and that's we can educate ourselves about the issues at hand. We in the state, nationwide, I don't know what the stats are in the state, but for suicide, we're not paying attention to what is actually suicide in the state with adult population specifically. So what we have nationwide is that we automatically assume that somebody who enters an ER or emergency has an emergency like EMS or ER interface, so or EMS responds or they enter the ER. That person who comes in with a drug overdose, we automatically assume that that's related to substance use disorder. But about 30% of those are intentional suicide attempts. And we're missing a lot of that because of our idea that everyone is using. Our highest population of our only increase in opiate overdose right now is in the 55 and older female population. Everyone else is declining in overdose, but 55 and older females is increasing. And we don't really know why, but we've done a really great job otherwise curbing things, but that one is increasing continuing to go up. So what we're really understanding with adults, and I'm afraid is even more prevalent with youth, that because of the stigma associated with substance use disorder and mental health, that people don't seek help. So if you think to yourself, I gotta go to my boss and I've gotta tell him I need to see the doctor. I have a thyroid condition, I need to do a follow-up care, I need to go see the doc, it's a little out of whack. How does that make you feel? Would you have any hesitancy going to your boss saying, hey, I need some time off from the doctor for an illness? Now if you think, going and asking your boss, I need some time off because I'm severely depressed and I'm struggling. Now how does that make you feel? You don't do that. We don't do that. I know I'm a social worker, and I had a serious bout of depression and anxiety in the last year, and I desperately needed counseling. And my sister's preaching at me to go, and I'm standing outside. And I was even recommended this counselor from a coworker of mine, and he's fantastic. You need to go see him. He's a brilliant man. He's done a million great things. You need to go see him. I said, okay. So I'm standing outside of the office, and I can't walk through that door. I'm the social worker who tells people to get help when they need help. And I am looking around going, does anybody see me? Does anybody know me here? And then I have to check myself. You idiot, get your butt through that door. This is no different than going to any other doctor. You tell everybody that all the time. But we have that because of the stigma associated with mental health. So we want to bust that stigma. That's my goal. If we could eliminate the stigma. And I have people challenge me. You can't eliminate that stigma. You'll never get there. So in 1946, a New York psychiatrist said that anyone who was left-handed risked being more involved with the criminal justice system than a person or a child who was right-handed. That was 1946. I won't make you tell your age, but some of you probably remember that.
No, I don't.
None of these people in here, though.
Never, right? Okay. Because some folks, even today, teachers are trying to retrain kids to write right-handed. Even today, to write right-handed, because there's a risk that they'll be to be. It's not true. It doesn't exist. They just write with their left hand. It has nothing to do with anything. It will not make you at risk for anything.
Makes you smart.
Apparently, you're just more artistic than the rest.
That's
Other than
amen.
that, that's it.
No, my husband has this thing, but it's not because there's something wrong with it. It's just that the world is made for right-handed people.
It is.
So it's
That's the only
safer, and left-handed people are more likely to die from work-related injuries because the machines are
Well,
made
that might be
for
true.
right-handed people.
That might be true. But you're not going to be more likely to be in the criminal justice system, but maybe lose a limb. Okay. So,
They get on opioids.
yeah, right. Then you be on opioids, and then the cycle starts. So the challenge is we've reduced that. We understand it. We've researched it. We've learned about it. We know we've reduced that stigma. The stigma almost doesn't exist. So I believe we can eliminate the stigma with mental health. I believe that. I believe that we have to focus that on our youth populations. More importantly, and as peers, it's very important for us to do it as adults, and for you and youth peer to peer, people our age. We take it better from somebody who's there with us, right in the same age group. So it's just the way we work. That you cannot have a healthy body without a healthy mind. It doesn't work. If you have diabetes, you are at a higher risk for depression and anxiety. If you have depression and anxiety, you're higher risk for heart disease. I mean, it goes hand in hand. It's attached to it. Our brain doesn't float over here. It's here with us, attached. So we have to understand that. But it's hard to reach out for help. Sometimes we're not listened to, and the system beats us down. So we have to fix that. That's my spiel. I think we do a better job today, but we could do so much better. I struggle with Usher County, it being one of my 13 counties that I work in. I struggle with this county, and I struggle with the faith-based communities. As a person of faith in this county, it hurts my heart that we have people and churches protesting about substance use disorder and addiction, because we have, and it happens on Facebook, it happens in the public eye, that churches will not have those people. Those people are sinners. That's our job. Our job is to bring in the sinner. Our job is to bring in the person to be, they are us. They are who we are. But I have people who will not touch that population. I will not be with that population. And I struggle with that. A lot of my counties do, but this one hurts more because I live here. This is my space. This is my place. I want it to be perfect. We have people that protest outside the harm reduction clinic. And that harm reduction clinic is the one place where somebody actually goes because they need to get their needles and they want to be clean about it. But it's also the one place that they can get a warm connection with a person. that actually understands what they are going through with a recovery coach. Somebody who has been there, done that. And we want to shut that down. We want to shut that avenue down. I got in a debate in Lewis County last week. Well, they just need to find God. And when you talk to somebody who's in recovery, that's not something they can even fathom at that point in their life. The only thing they can think of is, when am I going to get the next thing? When am I going to get my next pain-free? When am I going to be pain-free next? And I talked to folks in AA or NA, and the one guy I spoke to, he said, I couldn't reach for spirituality. That wasn't within my reach. So it was, you still have to put your faith in something to understand what faith means before you can even get there. And the first thing he said, well, I picked the tree out front of the place I met. My AA meeting was somewhere, and I picked the tree in front of the AA meeting, and I put my faith in that tree, that every day I went to that AA meeting, that tree was still going to be there. And he said, sure enough, every day I went, that tree was still there. He said, then I understood what faith was, and I understood what trust was.
I hope
and
nobody
could
put their
finally
faith in that tree
understand.
right there.
The one across the street?
No, the one right here by the parking lot. I know, me too. I hope nobody did. But, it's important to understand that, and I can't get some folks to understand that God is beyond reach for some folks. We have to start where they are. And I struggle trying to get people to understand that it's an illness, it is something we have to treat, it is something we have to get them help for, and that they're no different than we are in all reality. So,
Getting him help is really hard though, right? Sometimes.
it's miserable. That's our other structural problem.
I hear a lot of parents that are trying to rescue kids that enable them for the longest time, trying to rescue them. So
Right.
how do you figure out, how do you know when you're enabling and when you're helping? I mean, that would be a tough
The first
decision.
thing, the easiest way that I've been told, because I've experienced this in my own life with my cousin, if they love you and are happy with you as somebody with substance use disorder, then you are enabling them. If they are mad at you and ticked off and won't speak to you, then you're still loving them, trying to get them home. But that's the way things go. If they like you and you are their best friend, then you are somehow, in some way, enabling them, because they should not like you.
And so they're going to distance themselves from you until they're ready. There's not. It's like I used to go to AA meetings, not for me, of course, but anyway, until the person's ready to quit, to rescue themselves, what do? You just love them? I mean, that's what you do.
You have your door open. I'm not going to give you money. I'm not going to let you stay here. I'm not going to let you hurt me to get what you want. But I am here the day you decide. The day you decide, I will grab your hand and we will walk to the next step together. But they have to decide. I mean, it's not something that you can force someone into. Now, sometimes you can open the door for them and push them in a little, and then they get an awakening. But really, they have to make that decision. They really, truly have to make that decision. And they have to feel comfortable enough to come to you at that point. We have a lot of groups that working with the family is just as important as working with the person with substance use disorder. Especially in today's world, where a lot of our grandparents are raising grandchildren who feel helpless. Like, I screwed up with my own kids. How am I going to get this group right? And there's a stigma about that too. Why would we place that child with that set of grandparents when they screwed up their first set? That's diminishing. We can't afford not to do that. We have to. There's 7,500 kids in placement in West Virginia. We've got to use kinship relative care. We don't have foster families. We don't.
Although
have
our
that.
foster, but there's a lot with a foster care system too that is messed up. I mean,
Our court.
we have the Shays tried to do foster to adopt and had. I mean, they're pushing out good people because of.
And we really just need crisis foster homes. Not foster to adopt, not somebody who, we need a place where a kid can drop in for 30 to 90 days and have a safe space to go, which is hard on all of us, because then you care for that person. It's hard for our child protective workers, our law enforcement. It's not every day I see Sam cry, and today was a hard day in church for him because of that video. And it's because they see it every day, and they don't have a place to take kids that's safe. They know when they take it to the next door neighbor or they take a child to the family that it's just going to be just as bad there as it is going to be somewhere else, but it's the only thing they have available because kids want to, we want to do foster to adopt, and that's nothing against the Shays. I would want to take a kid and keep them, but we also have to realize that somebody can recover, and that so can the family if we wrap around them. Our court system sucks at it, though. Our treatment sucks. And don't quote me on that. Of course, now I'm going to be on a video. But
Well, what about what your thoughts though with babies that are born to drug
so
dependent mothers?
research says that if that only substance that mother was taking was an opiate, and we treat that because if you don't use medication assisted treatment, then spontaneous abortion is a risk. It's always guaranteed. So we treat her through the pregnancy. If we can control the use first trimester on, we minimize the risk of neonatal abstinence. It will still happen, but we can minimize it. But that child will be normal. There's no long-term lasting effects for opiate use. What happens is when you start throwing in all the other substances. So we cannot predict methamphetamine. We have no idea.
Okay,
Tobacco
but what about the
is
moms
10 times
that
worse.
don't get help and do we really want to put those children back?
We have a higher
Into
risk
that.
of that mom having more pregnancies if we don't keep her with that child. And that's just statistically. Do I struggle with that? That's a huge struggle for me. That's a huge moral struggle for me. But research says that mom will, if we can treat mom while baby is small, intensively treat, she will be more successful at long-term recovery. But we have to start right then in pregnancy.
And I understand that because I know taking away a child is all going to create
It's
that
trauma.
but it's still
just
a child.
another trauma.
That infant won't know that trauma.
Right. Well, and our system is broken. So we have a mental health system that if you miss an appointment more than once, then they label you again, stigma labels. Here you go. They label you non-compliant. We don't even ask the person why they missed. We don't try to reach. Okay, if you're depressed and you don't want to leave your home, what's the likelihood you're going to an appointment for depression when you have to leave your home?
The VA does reach all mental health patients that don't show up for their appointments.
Right. And most mental health
We call every patient, even the
Right.
ones that miss their regular appointments.
Right, and some places are really good about it. Some places are fantastic with it, and some aren't, which is the crap of shoot of where do you get. And there's a huge emphasis placed on those populations too, because they're very high risk. Veterans are very high risk for mental illness and substance use.